I've got two visions of the future that are coming from the very highest echelons of the country below. The first is pieced together from a series of articles and posts. It is to do with Dominic Cummings' plan to build a super defense agency to boost the economy in the North using £800 million.
Whoa, super defense.
We're building nerve in Hull, folks.
Yeah.
Yes. Ministers, goes the article from the Times, are preparing to develop two cutting-edge scientific research bodies in the Midlands and the north of England after Boris Johnson's promise to, quote, level up investment outside the southeast.
We're going to finally find out how many genders there are.
Yes.
We're going to settle this once and for all.
As Joe Biden said, at least 3.
Find an island in Bassett Law and call it Shadow Moses Island. That's how you got to do
Male,
it.
female, and malarkey.
Downing Street. Downing Street is said to be determined that an £800 million advanced research projects agency will be based outside the Golden Triangle of London, Oxford, and Cambridge, and wants to set up a center of scientific excellence modeled on MIT in the north. So the following quote is from a briefing document obtained under a FOIA request by the New Scientist. Our proposal is that a new body offering academics longer-term funding spanning at least 10 years to tackle significant societal challenges, problems, or opportunities could help do this and strengthen the UK's global reputation.
Can I just throw something out there? You said £800 million.
That's not very much.
DARPA, as an agency, has an annual budget of about $3.5 billion, but it's part of the overall Pentagon research budget. That's about $105 billion. So I don't know what this is besides a press release, but I don't see how you're going to be able to build a nuclear-armed walking battle tank called Metal Gear in Hull with just £800 million.
We're going to revolutionize the heated seat system in the new Range Rover.
I'm going to write a letter to Mr. Cummings, and I'm going to say that, look, dude, I've got this idea, so you could have this like small computer that sits on your desk, and you can grow exactly one tomato inside it. I think he's going to work really well for him.
Hussein, I think you're not wrong. I think this is basically this is basically just a government-funded MIT Media Lab.
Right.
Oh, I'm loving this. Just like people are sitting in the cabinet going like, guys, Britain's got some serious problems. To solve this, we're going to have to get Epstein money.
No, I mean what Dominic Cummings says. Like, look, I've been listening to this really cool like technology podcast called Trash Future, and I've got this really great idea where like you can put like lobes on people's heads and create a social media network out of it.
Oh, that's all it's going to be.
It's also
and
going to be
somehow it
amazing
like will measure craniums as well.
Hell yeah.
If they actually do create a research institute, and then all of a sudden it just becomes like they only hire European researchers and basically like just grant them visas to come and live in Hull for 3 years or whatever, and like work on whatever faff shit they want to put together that's not going to actually lead to any. I mean, don't get me wrong, maybe they could do something, but like it's just it's a shockingly, if you know anything about defense research and acquisitions, it's a shockingly low amount of money, small amount of money, and so it's hilarious to me that this is, of course, given our extremely great press system in this country, is being repeated uncritically as just like, wow, they're going to revolutionize the North.
To be fair, if you really want to get revenge on the Europeans, making them live in Hull is a pretty good way of doing it.
Theo, you're a university man. What's your take on this?
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, first of all, that is a ridiculous amount of money, ridiculously tiny to do anything. I mean, but we've had programs in Australia where from the, like, if you give this the very kind of optimistic reading, right, which is that you do get, research teams that get long-term funding to actually just do stuff, and not just because it makes money. We've had that, especially in Australia, and there are good things that come out of it, but I just can't see that like in this sort of culturally cynical climate that this is, they'll say that. But it'll actually be like inventing a new kind of Lord of the Rings movie where all the hobbits are Muslims or something, right? Like it'll just be like a new way to fashion racism or what have you. But if you're gonna if you're going to give people a whole bunch of make work, you could go worse than 800 million pounds on research, but you could certainly do a lot better, because I mean we kind of know what a lot of the problems are, and we just refuse to spend any of the money on them because they're too politically charged to actually do. Like I haven't seen the words climate change come up yet in any of this, so you kind of have to frown at it and kind of wonder, hey, what's
Climate change is pretty bad, but we've got a giant robotic kangaroo that asks people if they're triggered, so that's pretty good.
So, Theo, I don't know if you followed this, and this is just a quick aside, but one of the details that wasn't particularly addressed in media coverage of the story was that when the Labour Party under Corbyn leaked those documents, or shared the leaked documents about the NHS trade talks, there was a rider, or sort of a clause in the executive summary and in the meeting notes that the U.S. had stipulated that any future U.S. trade deal explicitly could not mention climate change whatsoever. Because it was too. And something tells me that a Tory government with a much smaller majority that was willing to go that far is not going to be any. Let's put it this way. They have zero incentive to become more aware of climate change or address it. So the idea that any of that would actually get handled, or this would enter into the conversation, I think it's just
you're
climate
right.
change
This is not going to be used on anything that's actually meaningful or worthwhile, especially if it's something as politically charged as climate change. What it will actually be doing is trying to make that Chris Morris sketch where they put the pedophile on the ISS with the child come true.
So basically, pulling us back for a moment, you guys sort of prefigured sort of what's coming next in the notes, which is
space pedophilia.
Space pedophilia, baby. That's what I signed up for.
So it's this is from the article, which is that Dominic Cummings, Mr. Johnson's chief advisor, has backed a plan for a scientific research body modeled on the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, or DARPA, as Nate, you were saying, in the U.S. DARPA was set up in '58 after the Soviet Union launched the world's first satellite with a remit to prevent technological surprise and pump money into high-risk, high-reward projects. It has been credited with creating the GPS, stealth aircraft, and what eventually became the internet.
We're going to build a space that travels inside a dog.
But like I said, we are now living in Dominic Cummings' blog, and that means we're in a political moment where much of what's going to happen, at least for now, while Cummings' star is on the rise, can be discerned by looking at Dominic Cummings' blog and finding the right entries, which, because I'm a pain pig, is exactly what I did. So,
oh no. You've been
reading
reading The Matrix again.
This is an excerpt from the relevant entry. The ARPA history shows that a combination of vision, a modest amount of funding, so modest, with a felicitous context and process can almost magically give rise to new technologies that not only amplify a civilization, but also produce tremendous wealth for society.
Felicitous context is one of the members of sports team.
Yeah, also, and one of their great songs, Amplify Civilization, whatever the fuck that means.
Love to see it.
Isn't it time to do this again by reason with a capital R? Even with no Cold War.
Using the music editing software.
Even with no Cold War to use as an excuse. How about helping the children of the world grow up to think much better than most adults do today? So, Theo, when you said... When you were like, yeah, we know what the problems are. Yeah, we do know what the problems are. And in Dominic Cummings' version of the future, the problem is that we don't have enough commercially viable space travel, or we don't know what the next internet's going to be. The prospect of social collapse inside 100 years, does not seem to be a pressing concern to people who basically just want technology to be new kinds of toys, but also provide their a wizard did it theory of social change.
Yeah,
Mum's net in space.
I mean, they kind of believe that they're living in this, 1950s comic book version of the world where they're going to put, a man on Mars and he's going to have that stupid looking, round helmet or whatever. But we're actually living in the book Blood Meridian, and we're all the uncritical kid just kicking the rock down the road, absolutely witness to some of the worst, things to happen in history, and watching all of these disasters unfold before our eyes, and all of these dipshits, this dickhead floating this thought bubble, and the Jeff Bezoses and Elon Musks of the world are the judge dancing nude at the end. While the world is the baby that's being picked up by its feet and thrown against a rock.